The sky over Seoul did not tear open. There was no thunder, no flash of impossible light. The arrival was silent, a subtle wrongness in the data streams that governed the world. One moment, orbital sensors showed empty space near Jupiter. The next, a ship was there. It did not move. It simply appeared that it was a smooth, geometric shape, like a fractured crystal catching the sun. It made no sound, emitted no aggressive radiation, and broadcast no challenge. It simply waited. On Earth, in a small neurology clinic in the Mapo district, Myri finished her notes on a patient. The man had complained of sleeping too deeply, of waking feeling more tired than when he went to bed. He was her third case this week with similar symptoms. She marked it down to city stress and the changing seasons. Her window offered a view of the Han River, peaceful under a gray afternoon sky. Nothing felt amiss. High above, aboard the United Sol Council flagship Judicator, Engineer Jay watched the main viewer. The alien vessel hung in the blackness, beautiful and unsettling. The bridge was quiet, the usual hum of activity muted by tense anticipation. Captain Day One stood beside Jay, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "They call themselves the Gleam," Day One said, his voice low. "That's all they've told us. No demands, no declarations. They're just waiting for us to say hello?" Jay asked. "It seems so. The council has voted. We send the standard welcome package and invite an emissary aboard. A peaceful first contact protocol." Jay felt a knot in his stomach. He worked with machines. He understood thrust and power, heat dispersion, and structural integrity. This ship defied his understanding. It had no visible engines, no weapon ports, no shield projectors. It was a blank, polished stone. In his experience, the things you could not understand were the most dangerous. The welcome package, a compilation of mathematical principles, peaceful greetings in every major language, and an invitation, was sent. The response was immediate. A soft pulse of light echoed from the crystal ship. Then, a shape detached. It was a smaller version of the main vessel, a shuttle that moved towards the Judicator with a gentle, gliding motion. The boarding ceremony was a strange affair. The Gleam emissary did not walk. It floated, a humanoid form wrapped in layers of shifting, silvery light. Its face was a smooth oval, occasionally shimmering with patterns that resembled gentle waves or falling leaves. It communicated not with sound, but by projecting these soft, calming light patterns directly onto the minds of those present. The meaning was clear, a feeling more than words. Peace. Unity. In the meeting chamber, the emissary presented its purpose. The light patterns formed images of galaxies, stars, and finally planets torn by war. A feeling of deep sadness washed over the council members. Then, an image of serene beings, their minds connected in silent harmony. A feeling of profound peace followed. "We offer the gift," the patterns conveyed. "The harmony wave. It soothes the chaotic mind. It ends the disease of conflict. We wish to give this to you, so you may join the peaceful community of the galaxy." Captain Day One leaned forward. "This gift, how does it work?" "It is a gentle field. It aligns discordant thoughts. It brings inner quiet. There is no pain, only peace." A council member from another nation spoke, her voice eager. "A weapon to end all weapons?" The emissary's light dimmed slightly. "It is not a weapon. It is a cure. You may test it. See its harmony for yourselves." The proposal was made. A test on a remote, uninhabited lunar research outpost. It contained basic flora and fauna for ecological studies. No intelligent life. The council, swayed by the promise of an end to war and the emissary's tranquil presence, agreed. Jay's protest died in his throat. He was just an engineer. Who was he to question the council and this advanced being? Orders were relayed. The Gleam shuttle would deploy the harmony wave towards the lunar base from a distance. All monitoring equipment was set to record every possible piece of data. Back in her clinic, Myri packed her bag to go home. The news streams were filled with the historic arrival, the promise of the gift. Experts debated the end of militaries. People smiled with hopeful relief. Yet, as she locked her office door, Myri's screen flashed with an alert from the National Health Network. It was a generalized notice about reporting unusual sleep patterns. The code attached to it indicated a Level 1 passive observation. Someone somewhere was quietly worried. She thought of her 3 patients, all reporting that same heavy, dreamless sleep. Coincidence, surely. She pushed the thought away and stepped out into the sole evening, unaware that high above, the test was beginning. On the Judicator's bridge, every screen was focused on the lunar base. The outpost sat in the silent sea of tranquility, a cluster of domes and solar panels. Life signs showed green for the simple plants and animals inside. The Gleam emissary gave a soft pulse of light. Observe, the beginning of your peace. From the shuttle, nothing visible fired. No beam, no pulse, no energy signature their sensors could catch. One moment, the base was active. The next, every single life sign on the monitor turned a solid, unwavering gray. The telemetry feeds from the base's systems went flat. No alarms. No distress calls. Just silence. The mechanical systems, however, were fine. Lights still shone on the external cameras. The base was intact. But everything inside that had been living was now utterly, completely still. The emissary's light patterns swirled with serene satisfaction. See? Chaos calmed. Conflict resolved. This is the gift. The bridge of the Judicator was dead quiet. Captain Daywin's face was pale. Jay stared at the gray lines on the life sign monitor, a cold terror seeping into his bones. This was not peace. This was a quiet, perfect end. The Gleam had not brought a weapon. They had brought a tomb, and they were smiling their gentle, light-filled smile about it. The silence on the bridge of the Judicator was not peaceful. It was heavy and cold. Every person stared at the main viewer, where the lunar base sat unchanged in the gray dust. Its lights were still on, but the life signs were gone. Captain Day One was the first to move. He turned slowly to face the Gleam emissary. The being floated in its spot, its soft light patterns swirling in calm, circular motions. It felt like a smile. "What?" Day One said, the word sharp in the quiet. "Did you do?" The emissary's light pulsed gently. "We have shown you the harmony. The violent chaos of independent thought has been quieted. They are at perfect peace." A council member from the video screen, her face ashen, spoke. "Those were living creatures. You've killed them." "Killed?" The light patterns bloomed in a shape like a puzzled head tilt. "No. They are not dead. Their bodies function. They simply no longer suffer the disease of a restless mind. They are calm. This is the gift we offer to all." Jay looked from the emissary to the data screen at his engineering station. He pulled up the raw feed from the base. The internal cameras showed the truth. In the plant lab, the small, green shoots were not wilted. They stood straight, but they were utterly motionless. No gentle growth movement. In the animal habitat, the insects and small rodents lay on the ground, their sides slowly moving with breath, but their eyes were open and unseeing. They did not react to light or sound. It was a living pause, a coma imposed from the stars. "This is not a gift," Captain Day One said, his voice low and controlled. "This is an attack. You have attacked a Soul Council asset." The emissary's light dimmed, as if saddened. "You view peace as an attack. This is the tragedy of your disease. We will leave you to consider. The offer remains. We can help you." Without another pattern, the being floated back towards its shuttle bay. No one tried to stop it. The reality of what they had seen was too large, too terrifying, to process. The moment the inner airlock door sealed, the bridge erupted into noise. Voices shouted from the council screens. Officers called out sensor readings. Day One slammed his hand on the command chair. "Quiet!" he roared. The bridge fell silent again. "Jay. Full analysis. What just happened? I want to know what that field was, how it works, and how we can block it." Jay nodded, his hands already flying over his console. "The scanners detected almost nothing, Captain. A faint, subspace resonance. No energy burst. No particle beam. It's like it bypassed all physical shields and hit the biology directly." Then we assume we have no defense against it, Day One said, thinking aloud. If they can do that to a base, they can do it to a ship, to a city. He turned to the communications officer. Send a priority warning to Earth Command. Code Black. Unconventional biological threat. All cities are to go to silent monitoring. No aggressive actions. On Earth, the news of the successful test had already been broadcast. The public saw images of the intact base and heard the Gleam's words about peace. People were hopeful. The code black warning from the Judicator was a bucket of ice water on that hope. It was classified, but the sudden change in tone from the authorities was obvious. The cheerful music on news channels stopped. Officials looked tensed in her apartment. Myri watched the shift happen. The initial report called the test a step toward a new understanding. An hour later, a stern-faced anchor urged calm and said more data was being reviewed. She thought of her patients. The man who said he felt like he was swimming up from concrete every morning. The woman who said her sleep was so deep it felt empty. A new alert popped up on her secured medical network. It was a request for consultation, flagged as urgent. It was from the Global Health Organization. Attached were anonymized brain scans from the lunar base's lab animals. Pre- and post-exposure. Myri opened them. Her breath caught. The pre-exposure scans showed normal, active rodent brains. The post-exposure scans showed a brain in a state of deep, non-REM sleep. But it was wrong. It was too deep. The line was flat, with no spikes, no dips, no movement. It was the brainwave pattern of a coma, but a perfectly stable, sustained one. The part of the brain that should spark, that should trigger a shift into dreaming sleep or wakefulness, was completely dormant. It was as if the internal alarm clock had been removed. Her personal comm unit buzzed. It was a message from an unknown high-priority sender. The text was short. Myri, it's Jay. Don't trust the official reports. The test was a massacre. They put everything into a coma. The wave targets sleep cycles. I need your brain, your expertise. Please. Myri stared at the message. Jay. She hadn't heard from her university friend in years. Not since he joined the space service. He was on the Judicator. He was there. Her eyes went back to the brain scans on her screen. The flat, terrible lines. Sleep cycles. Her patience. She understood now. The deep, empty sleep. The struggle to wake. It wasn't stress. It was a whisper. A faint, distant echo of whatever had hit the moon base. The Gleam's gift wasn't just on the moon. It was already here, brushing against the edges of Earth. Testing, perhaps softening them up. Her fingers raced across her keyboard. She opened a direct, encrypted link to Jay's identifier. She typed her reply. I see it. The wave suppresses the sleep-wake transition. It forces the brain into permanent, deep NREM sleep. No dreams. No waking. But there's something. She pulled up human sleep architecture charts. Our sleep is messy, imperfect. We have micro-awakenings, brief conscious spikes. Could that matter? She sent it and looked out her window at the glittering, unsuspecting city. The weapon wasn't a laser. It was a lullaby, and the whole world was starting to yawn. The two messages crossed in the dark. Jay's warning was a flare of panic. Myri's reply was a shaft of cold, clinical light on the bridge of the Judicator. Jay saw her words appear on his private screen. Micro-awakenings. He didn't fully understand, but he felt a jolt of hope. Myri saw patterns in chaos. If she saw something, it was real. Captain Day One was not looking for hope. He was building a wall. All ships, he commanded, his voice echoing through the fleet channel. Go to combat readiness. Power all kinetic batteries. Target the Gleam vessel, but do not fire unless fired upon. This is a defensive posture. Across the Sol fleet, massive railguns began to hum with charge. Heavy cannons turned slowly on their mounts, their silent muzzles pointing at the beautiful crystal ship. It was a show of brute force, of raw power. It was the only language they had left to speak. Jay watched the tactical display. Dozens of red threat indicators glowed around the Gleam ship. It looked impressive. It looked strong, but his stomach was a knot of ice. They were pointing cannons at a weapon that didn't use bullets. They were threatening a being who thought comas were a gift that I in her apartment. Myri didn't see the fleet. She saw brainwaves. She pulled data from the lunar test, from her own patients, from global sleep studies. The Gleam's harmony wave worked by rhythm. It found the natural, slow rhythm of the deep sleep brainwaves and amplified them. It turned the gentle tide of sleep into a crushing, still ocean. It prevented the brain from ever making the jump to the faster, chaotic waves of wakefulness or dreaming. But human sleep was not a perfect, smooth rhythm. Her charts showed it clearly. Throughout the night, the human brain sparked. For 3 seconds, 5 seconds, barely enough to register. These were the micro-awakenings, evolutionary ghosts, a leftover from ancient times when sleeping too deeply might mean death. They were tiny resets, blips of consciousness so brief they were forgotten. The Gleam wave would try to smooth out those blips, to maintain its perfect, calm rhythm. But what if it couldn't? What if the human brain was too messy, too stubborn? The wave might make a person terribly drowsy, might slow them down, but perhaps it could not achieve the permanent, flat lock it had on other species. She needed to test it. She couldn't replicate the wave, but she could simulate its principle. She had access to a neural entrainment device in her clinic, used for gentle sleep therapy. It could generate soothing, rhythmic pulses of light and sound designed to guide the brain into deep sleep. It was a whisper compared to the Gleam's shout, but the theory was the same. Myri ran to her clinic in the empty night. The streets were quieter than they should be. People were inside, watching the news, feeling an unnameable weight. She reached her office, her hands shaking as she unlocked the door. She set up the entrainment device. She attached the sensors to her own head. This was reckless, but there was no time. She had to know. She programmed the device to mimic, as best she could guess, the deep, slow, relentless rhythm from the lunar animal scans. She took a deep breath and started the sequence. A low, pulsing tone filled her ears. A soft, matching light pulsed behind her closed eyelids. Immediately, a heavy blanket of drowsiness fell over her. It was powerful. Her thoughts slowed. She felt herself sinking, like into thick mud. This was it. This was the pull her patients had described. The empty sleep. Her own brainwave feed scrolled across her monitor. The lines were smoothing out, deepening. She was heading for the flat, calm ocean. Deeper, heavier. Then, a spike. A jagged, sudden burst of activity on the screen. In her mind, it was a flash of awareness. The chair is hard, my finger is cold, and then it was gone. The rhythmic pulse pushed her back down. She sank again. The world faded. Another spike. A blip. The light is red. Down. Up for a second. I am Myri. Down. The machine is beeping. The rhythm was trying to dominate, but her brain kept fighting back with these tiny, automatic rebellions. It was exhausting, felt like trying to run in a dream, but she was not locked in. She was struggling. She could, she realized with a dizzy jolt, open her eyes. With a tremendous effort of will, she forced her eyelids apart. The pulse continued, but the spell was broken. She was awake, drained, foggy, but conscious. She stared at the screen, gasping. The theory was right. The human brain had a flawed, beautiful defense. It was never fully offline. The Gleam's perfect weapon required a perfect, obedient sleep cycle. Humanity did not have that. Her comm unit buzzed. It was Jay. She accepted the audio link, her voice thin. Jay? Myri, tell me you have good news. The captain is about to start a war we can't understand. I have an answer, she whispered, her eyes on the graph of her own resilient, spiking brain. Their weapon. It can't hold us. Our sleep is broken. We wake up in the night for just a second. It's enough. It breaks the rhythm. On the bridge, Jay felt the meaning of her words wash over him. It wasn't about being stronger. It was about being imperfect. It was about a glitch that saved your life. He looked at the main viewer, at all their powerful guns pointed at the wrong target. Tell the captain, Myri said, her voice growing stronger. They gauged our cannons. They didn't gauge our sleep. Tell him the weapon they should be looking at is in our heads. It strikes a microsecond before we even think to rise. Jay turned from his console. Captain Day One was standing before the great window, a silhouette against the stars and the menacing fleet, ready to give an order that would mean nothing. "Captain," Jay called out, his voice cutting through the tense quiet. "I know what their weapon does, and I know why it might not work on us." He held up his comm unit, as if it contained the secret itself. "We've been looking at the wrong defense." Day One turned, his face etched in the harsh light of the tactical displays. The wrong war was moments away. The bridge of the Judicator was a painting of tension. The only movement was the slow, deliberate sweep of weapon-targeting scanners on the main screen, painting red lines across the silent gleam vessel. Captain Day One turned from the view. His face was hard, but his eyes were tired. "Speak, Jay," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the silent deck. "You have 1 minute before I signal the fleet to prepare a firing solution. The Council is screaming for action." Jay stood up from his engineering station. He felt small under the gaze of the officers and the glowing Council screens. He held his comm unit, still open to Myri's line, like a lifeline. "Sir, the gleam weapon, it doesn't attack the body. It attacks the sleep cycle." Jay began, trying to make his voice firm. He repeated Myri's words as best he could. "It forces the brain into the deepest, quietest stage of sleep and locks it there. Permanently. That's the coma we saw." Daywin's jaw tightened. "A biological attack. Then we are even more vulnerable. We have no shields for that." "No, Captain," Jay said, taking a step forward. "We might. My contact on Earth, the neuroscientist, she tested the principle. She says the weapon requires a perfect, smooth sleep rhythm to establish its lock. Human sleep isn't perfect. Our brains, they have brief awakenings all night long. Tiny sparks of consciousness. We don't even remember them." A council member's voice crackled from a speaker, full of disbelief. "You are saying our defense against an alien pacification field is bad sleep?" "I'm saying it's different sleep," Jay insisted. He looked at Day One, pleading for him to understand. "Their weapon is like a constant, heavy drumbeat. It wants to make every brain beat in time with it. But our brains have these little stutters, these hiccups. They break the rhythm. The lock can't hold perfectly. It would be like trying to smooth out a spiky rock with a blanket. The shape is still there." Captain Day One stared at him. He was a soldier. He thought in terms of armor and missiles. This talk of brainwaves and micro-awakenings felt like a fairy tale. Yet, the engineer's eyes were clear, urgent with truth. "A theory," Day One finally said, "from one scientist on Earth, against what we saw with our own eyes on that moon base. You ask me to risk the entire human race on a hiccup." Before Jay could answer, the Gleam emissary returned. It did not use the door. Its form simply coalesced from light in the center of the bridge, its serene patterns washing over them. The crew jumped back, hands reaching for sidearms they knew were useless. The emissary's light focused on the main viewer, on the human guns aimed at its ship. A feeling of profound disappointment washed over the room. "You choose the chaos," the light patterns formed. "You point your violent toys. You have seen the harmony. You could have peace. Instead, you choose the disease." Captain Day One stepped forward, putting himself between the emissary and his crew. "What you call peace, we call death. We reject your gift." "It is not a rejection you can make," the emissary communicated. A new feeling entered the patterns. Finality. "The disease is too deep. It must be treated. For the good of the whole." On the main viewer, the crystal ship began to glow from within. A deep, resonant hum vibrated through the Judicator's hull, a sound felt in the bones more than heard with ears. "They're powering the main weapon?" a sensor officer shouted. Energy buildup matching the lunar test signature, but 1,000 times greater. It's targeting the entire fleet and Earth. Panic seized the bridge. This was it. They were going to put the human race to sleep forever. Daewon's hand shot out, hovering over the command to fire every gun they had. Jay saw it all happening in slow motion. The captain's hand, the glowing ship, the terrified faces. Myri's voice was a whisper in his ear from the comm unit. They gauged the wrong weapon. He didn't think. He just moved. He stepped past the captain and stood directly before the Gleam emissary. He had no weapon, no armor. Just words. "You made a mistake," Jay shouted, not in anger, but with a desperate certainty. The emissary's light flickered, its focus shifting to this lone, defiant human. "You looked at us," Jay said, his voice ringing in the quiet bridge. "You saw our ships, our guns. You measured that strength. You thought that was our weapon. You didn't look deep enough." He held up his comm unit, displaying the jagged, spiky lines of a human sleep cycle that Myri had sent. Next to it, he put the smooth, flat, terrible line from the lunar lab animal. "Your harmony needs a quiet mind to work. A mind that sleeps perfectly." Jay's words were coming faster now. "Our minds are never quiet, not even in sleep. We have a watchfulness you don't understand. It's a remnant from a darker past. A past where if you slept too soundly, you died." The emissary's light patterns swirled, confused. The deep hum from their ship continued to build. Captain Daewon watched, his hand still poised. He saw not an engineer, but a man standing before a god, telling it a secret. Jay pointed at the two brainwave lines. "Your weapon is a lullaby, but humanity, we are the species that startles awake at a floorboard's creak in the middle of the night. You can sing your song, but we will always wake up for a second. And in that second," Jay said, locking his eyes with the emissary's core of light, "we are free of you." The bridge held its breath. The hum from the Gleam ship wavered. The emissary was silent, its patterns frozen. It was recalculating. For the first time, it was looking past the human cannons. It was looking at the messy, imperfect, resilient thing inside the human skull. Jay had gambled everything on Myri's theory. He had just told the galaxy's greatest peacemakers that humanity's flaw was its greatest shield. He waited, hoping the truth sounded as powerful to them as it had to him. The deep hum from the Gleam ship did not stop, but its pitch changed. It was no longer a single, building note of power. It became a questioning thrum, a vibration that seemed to probe the space around the judicator. The emissary's light patterns swirled in complex, rapid shapes. It was not angry. It was analyzing. On the bridge, no one moved. Captain Daewon's hand had not touched the fire command. He watched Jay, who stood like a rock before the shimmering alien, still holding his comm unit with its two lines of proof. One smooth and dead, one jagged and alive. This irregularity, the emissary's patterns formed. The feeling was not of understanding, but of clinical curiosity. "It is a defect, a noise in the system." "It is our system," Jay replied, his voice steadier now. "You built a key for a perfect lock. Our lock is imperfect. Your key will not turn." The emissary floated closer. The light from its form played over Jay's face. "The harmony wave aligns all consciousness to a peaceful frequency. A brain must be receptive to alignment. Your claim is that these spikes break the reception." "They break the rhythm," Jay said, echoing Myri. "You can push us down, but we pop back up. Not by choice. It just happens. It is built into us." In her clinic on Earth, Myri listened through the open comms link. She heard the alien's translated words. A defect. A noise. She looked at her own brainwave scan from her test, the defiant spikes against the rhythmic pulse. She spoke softly, knowing Jay's unit would pick it up. "It's not a defect. It's a legacy. It is the watchfire of a species that evolved in the dark. Afraid. It never went out. Tell them that." Jay didn't repeat her words exactly. He let them fuel his own. "It is not noise. It is a watch. An ancient watch we keep inside our own minds. You offer a sleep without dreams. We choose dreams. We choose to wake up." The emissary was silent for a long moment. The Gleam ship humming shifted again. On the tactical screen, the sensor officer whispered, "The targeted energy is dispersing. They're not aiming at Earth anymore. They're scanning. They're focusing long-range scanners on Earth. Biological scanners." The emissary confirmed it. "We will observe this claim. We will measure the watch." There was no threat in the statement. It was a simple declaration of testing. A new tension filled the bridge. They were not being attacked. They were being studied like bugs under a light. Captain Day One finally lowered his hand from the weapons console. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Verification," the emissary replied. Its light extended towards Jay's comm unit, and the data there seemed to flow into its form. "The theory is a curiosity. We must see the practical truth. The harmony wave will be directed at your planet at a low intensity. Enough to measure the resonance, the alignment. Enough to see if your micro-awakenings are a barrier or merely a delay." Panic shot through Jay. "No. You can't. You'll put billions to sleep. At this intensity, the effect will be a strong drowsiness. A deep pull towards sleep. If your claim is true, your species will resist full alignment. They will stir. We will see the spikes. If your claim is false." The emissary's light patterns softened, almost pitying. "Then you will have the peace you refuse to accept." It was a planet-sized lab experiment. There was no time to argue. The emissary's form began to fade. "The observation begins now." On Earth, the change was subtle at first. Myri felt it in her clinic. A sudden, heavy wave of fatigue. It was not normal tiredness. It was a thick, sweet pull, like sinking into a warm bath with weights tied to her limbs. Her screen blurred. She heard a distant sigh from the street below, then quiet. Across Seoul, across the world, the same thing happened. People mid-sentence yawned deeply. Drivers felt their eyelids droop and urgently pulled over. Office workers slumped at their desks. Children playing outside lay down on the grass and were still. The world, in moments, grew slow and quiet in space. The Judicator watched. Planetary sensors showed a terrifying shift. Global movement dropped by 70% in minutes. Vital signs across populated areas indicated deep, deep sleep. Captain Day One looked at Jay, his face grim. "Your scientist's theory had better be right." Jay couldn't answer. He was staring at Earth, at the gentle blue and white marble he called home. It looked peaceful. Too peaceful. He gripped the comm unit. "Myri? Myri? Can you hear me?" In her clinic, Myri was fighting. The weight was immense. It was the feeling from her test, but multiplied. It was the song of the galaxy, sung just for humanity, and it was beautiful in its promise of rest. To stop fighting would be so easy. Her head nodded. Her eyes closed. Then, a spark. A flash behind her eyes. The chair. The screen. J. A micro-awakening. The gleam rhythm tried to smooth it over, to pull her back under. Another spike. Cold. Floor. Breathe. It was agony. It was like trying to swim up through tar. But her brain, her flawed, wonderful brain, kept doing its automatic ancient duty. It was checking in. It was firing the watchfire. With a gasp that felt like tearing free from chains, Myri's eyes flew open. She was drenched in sweat. She was so tired she could cry. But she was awake. "Jay?" She croaked into the comms on the bridge. Her ragged voice was the sweetest sound Jay had ever heard. At the same moment, the gleam emissary reappeared, its light patterns flashing in rapid, chaotic bursts. For the first time, the feeling it projected was not calm. It was shock. "The resonance is broken." The patterns formed, colored with disbelief. "The alignment fails. The species-wide rhythm is not synchronizing. There is resistance. Constant, tiny resistance. Everywhere." The emissary turned its full attention to Jay. The pity was gone, replaced by a cold, terrifying wonder. "You do not sleep. You stand watch. Even in your rest, you stand watch." Jay met its gaze, exhaustion and triumph warring inside him. "We told you," he said simply. "You gauged the wrong weapon." The emissary's light dimmed. The humming from their ship ceased entirely. The galaxy's peacemakers had found a species they could not pacify. The silence that followed was not the silence of harmony. It was the silence of a stalemate, broken only by the sound of a world slowly, stubbornly, waking back up. The Gleam emissary did not move. It hovered in the center of the Judicator's bridge, its light patterns swirling in a slow, stunned confusion. The calm certainty was gone. The feeling it projected now was something entirely new. The cold vertigo of a fundamental truth breaking on the main viewer. Earth was no longer a still picture. Data streams flickered back to life. Movement indexes began a slow, stubborn climb from 10% to 15 to 20. It was a planet groaning back to consciousness. The great, gentle lullaby was failing, defeated by a billion years of tiny, neurological alarms. Captain Day One watched the numbers rise. He looked from the screen to Jay, and then to the silent alien. The massive guns of the fleet were still aimed, but they felt foolish now, like pointing a stick at a flood. The emissary's light focused on Jay. The patterns formed, sharp and clear. Explain the mechanism. This watch. Is it voluntary? A choice? Jay thought of Myri's words.
No.
It is older than choice. It is a piece of our history, written into our bodies. Long ago, our world was dangerous. To sleep without listening was to die. So we never fully slept. Part of us always listened. That part is still here. It is why your rhythm cannot stick. A relic, the emissary pulsed. An evolutionary scar. You cling to fear. We cling to waking up, Jay corrected softly. He took a step closer. The fear was leaving him, replaced by a strange pity of his own. You offer a peace that is an end. We want a peace that is a morning. They are not the same thing. On Earth, Myri pushed herself up from her desk. Her body felt heavy, her mind thick with fog, but the terrible, sweet pull was gone. She stumbled to the window. Below, the streets of Seoul were a scene of surreal calm. People were sitting up in their cars, rubbing their eyes. Others helped each other to their feet on the sidewalks. There was no panic, just a vast, collective confusion, like a city stirring from a deep, unexpected nap. They were waking, all of them. She picked up her comm unit. Jay, it's receding. The pressure is gone. People are waking up. On the bridge, her voice was a testament. The emissary heard it. The alien being seemed to contract, its light drawing inward. The implications were crashing down. Their gift, their perfect solution to the chaos of sentience, was useless here. Worse than useless, it was seen as a horror. Humanity was an anomaly, a flawed, spiky, restless anomaly that refused to be smoothed. Your species is a paradox, the emissary communicated, the patterns tinged with a bleak realization. You seek community, yet your consciousness is fundamentally isolated, guarding itself even from itself. You build, yet you carry the fear of the ancient dark in your very minds. You cannot be harmonized. Captain Day One saw an opening, a chance to end this. Then there is no reason for you to stay. You will leave our space. Now. The emissary's light flared once, bright and quick. It was not aggression. It was emphasis. You misunderstand. This is not a retreat. It is an observation of failure. Our mission is peace. Your biology is war, a quiet, eternal war between sleep and wakefulness. You have weaponized your own instability. The words hung in the air. Weaponized your own instability. Jay understood first. His blood ran cold. The Gleam were not soldiers. They were doctors. And to a doctor, a disease that resists all treatment is not a triumph. It is a terrifying curiosity, a threat to their entire understanding. You see us as a sickness? Jay said, the truth dawning on him. We see you as a reality we cannot cure, the emissary replied, and therefore a reality we must contain. Your watch makes you immune to our peace. But does it watch when you are awake? Before anyone could react, the emissary's form blazed. A new pulse, different from the deep hum of the harmony wave, shot from it. A tight beam of light that struck Jay directly in the chest that it did not hurt. It was cold. A wave of instant, paralyzing fatigue washed over him, but it was a fatigue of the body, not the mind. His muscles turned to water. His knees buckled. He crashed to the floor, unable to move a finger, but his thoughts were screamingly clear. He was awake. He was trapped. "Jay!" Captain Day One roared, reaching for a weapon. "Do not." The emissary's pattern cut through the air, cold and final. "This is a different frequency. A neuromuscular inhibitor. Targets the waking body. Your watch is for the sleeping mind. It is silent now. This you have no defense against." The emissary looked down at Jay, who could only stare up, his mind racing in a prison of flesh. "You have shown us your strength. Now you show us your weakness. Your vigilance has a blind spot. You are only safe when you are already asleep." It was the ultimate irony. Humanity's great shield was also its pinpoint vulnerability. They were immune to a weapon that put the universe to sleep, but only while that weapon was active. To every other threat, they were just flesh and bone. The emissary's light began to fade, its form dissolving. "We will depart. Your anomaly will be recorded. Do not follow. Do not seek us. You are a puzzle we cannot solve. The galaxy is vast. Stay in your corner of it with your watches and your wars. That is the only peace possible for you." With a final, soft pulse, it was gone. The bridge was left in a shattered silence, broken only by the slow, steady breath of Jay, lying helpless on the floor, his eyes wide open, completely aware of his own defeat. They had won. And in winning, they had shown the universe exactly how to lose. The paralysis lasted for 10 long minutes. To Jay, lying on the cold floor of the bridge, it felt like hours. He heard everything. The frantic calls of the medics, Captain Daywin's orders to track the Gleam vessel, which vanished from sensors as silently as it had arrived. The confused reports from Earth, a world shaking off the deepest sleep it had ever known. He felt the tingling return to his fingers first, then a painful ache in his muscles as they woke up. The medics helped him sit, then stand. His legs were unsteady. Captain Day One stood before him, his expression unreadable. "Report to the medical bay," Day One said. It was not a suggestion. "Sir, now engineer." In the white, bright medical room, a doctor scanned him and found nothing. No damage. No residual effects. Just a body that had been told to be still and had obeyed. The shame of it burned worse than any injury. They had found humanity's brilliant, unique defense, and in the same moment the Gleam had found the simple, awful key to turn it off. "We are only safe when we are already asleep." A quiet chime came from the room's comm terminal. It was a private, secure channel request. From Earth. Jay accepted. Myri's face filled the screen. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but her gaze was sharp, alert. For a few seconds, they just looked at each other, two people who had held the fate of the world in a theory. "You were right," Jay said finally, his voice rough. "And because you were right, they knew exactly how to stop us. They used a different tool. Something for the waking body. I couldn't move. I was just a thing on the floor." Myri nodded slowly. She had seen the global data. The wave, the awakening, the sudden end. "I know. They were scientists, Jay. We gave them new data. They concluded their experiment. And their conclusion is that we're a contained threat," Jay said, bitterness rising in his throat. "We scared them, not with our guns, with our messy brains. So they put us in a box. Stay in your corner." That's what it said. On the screen, Myri was quiet. She looked past the camera, out her clinic window, gathering her thoughts. "They saw a weapon," she said softly. "They came to gauge a weapon. They looked at our ships and said, 'This is their weapon.' They were wrong. So they looked deeper. They looked at our sleep, at our micro-awakenings, and they said, 'This is their real weapon.' They were wrong again." Jay frowned. "What do you mean?" "It was our defense. It worked." "It was a symptom," Myri said, her voice gaining strength. "A symptom of the real thing. The Gleam kept looking for a thing. A device. A biological trick. They never understood the source." She leaned closer to the screen. The source is why we have micro-awakenings at all. It's the will to see the next morning. Not as a species, but as individuals, one by one. It's the stubbornness in a single heart that says, I will wake up. That's not a weapon you can gauge or measure. It just is. Jay felt her words settle over him, cooling the bitterness. The Gleam had seen a spiky brainwave and called it a shield. They had seen a paralyzed body and called it a weakness. They had measured everything and understood nothing. So what do we do now? He asked. We live, Myri said, with a small, tired smile. We live with our imperfect sleep and our waking fears. We build our peace, the kind with mornings. And we keep watch, not just in our sleep, but when we are awake, too. Weeks later, the Judicator was in orbit around Earth. The official reports called the event the Gleam Incident. It was filed away as a successful first contact defense. The public celebrated the resilience of the human spirit. They never learned about the micro-awakenings or the paralysis on the bridge. Some truths are too strange, too intimate, for the world. Jay stood on the observation deck, looking down at the planet. It was night over Asia, a sprawl of glittering lights. Somewhere down there, in the maze of Seoul, Myri was probably in her clinic, studying the stubborn, beautiful chaos of the human mind. Captain Day One joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. They stood in silence for a while. The Council wants to build new ships, Day One said. Faster, with bigger guns. They think the Gleam will be back with a different kind of weapon. Maybe they will, Jay said. Do you think they will? Jay took a sip. The coffee was bitter and hot. He thought of the emissary's cold, clinical light. No. I think we confused them. I think we broke their idea of the universe. To them, we're not an enemy. We're an unsolvable problem. They'll leave us alone. Day One grunted, watching the Earth turn. All that, because we can't sleep properly. Jay smiled, a real one this time. Not because we can't sleep, Captain. Because we always wake up. Even for a second. That's what they couldn't handle. He finished his coffee. They tried to gauge a weapon. They kept looking for the strike. They never realized the whisper was the strike. It can strike before you rise. It wasn't a threat. It was just a fact about us. Our consciousness rises before we even tell it to. Below, the line of dawn crept across the Pacific, separating night from day. A new morning, earned not by weapons or shields, but by a billion-year-old promise whispered in the blood and brain of every person on the glowing planet below. Promise to wake up. Today and tomorrow and all the tomorrows after.